What does it mean to see a dead person in your dream? We often view death as a tragic event because, let's face it, it's permanent. Doesn't really matter whether you believe in reincarnation or not. When it comes to your physical body, as it exists right here, right now, there's something permanent about death. It is no wonder that a lot of people approach the topic of death with fear, guilt, remorse, regret. Whatever emotion you're feeling when you think about death, chances are it's not good. It's negative. Still, if you want a realistic shot at truly understanding the deep meaning of your dream involving seeing, talking to, and otherwise being with a dead person, you need to understand that death is just part of life. Think of existence in its many different forms in this universe as a house. And if you go from one room to another, it seems that you are in a completely different space, different lighting, different room orientation, and definitely different furniture. But you're just going through different interior spaces of the same house. That is how you move from life as we know it in our waking life to death. And it is this journey through one sense of understanding and one sense of existence to another that underlies the nuanced and often confusing interpretation of dead people in dreams. What does it mean when you see a dead friend or loved one in your dream? The main focus here is not the fact that the person you're seeing is dead. The main focus here is familiarity. Death adds a layer of complexity to the interpretation, but the main focus here is that you realize that you know this person and they have gone through a change. Your subconscious is using this to project the issues of change and your level of comfort with it. What if I told you that people in your life and you yourself are constantly dying? No, I'm not going crazy. This is absolutely true. Why? You're a totally different person now in terms of what you think about, what your priorities are, and what your values are compared to your teenage self. At least this is true for most people. Change is the only constant in life. And when we change how we look at the world, we change how we feel, we change how we respond to things, we change what we do. As you probably already know, for every action, there's a reaction. It's when you take action on the things and ideas in your head that is when you start to change your world. And you've done that. Not once, not twice, but many times over at different times in your life. That's why I can confidently say that the old you has died. In fact, there are many corpses in your memory. There are many times where you have been born, were born, you're a new person, you look at the world in a different way, you do things differently, and then it matures. You get accustomed to things, and then your situation changes, and you change as well. So, what do we see? We see birth, maturity, death, and rebirth. We've done this many times in our lives. And the question is when you're seeing somebody that you remember in your dream who you know is dead, your mind is trying to tell you, take more control over this process. Don't be surprised. Use it to your advantage. This is you. You're going through this. And instead of thinking that life is just what happens to you, and that's why you tend to chase your own tail, go around in circles, and it seems like one day just blurs into another, and you're not really experiencing much meaning in your life. When you practice intentionality and understand that you're going through this process of death, birth, rebirth, and growth, you can start changing the direction of that process. You can start to impose your will on it. And that's how you live a meaningful life. That's how you start the path towards fulfillment, contentment, and serenity. What does it mean to dream about a loved one dying? In the context of death, seeing the process of a loved one dying in your dream is never prophetic. Oh, well, let me correct that. It's almost never prophetic. So the good news is just because you see somebody you care about in the state in the stages of dying, it doesn't mean that this is going to happen in real life. But with that said, your dream is actually saying something even more profound. Your subconscious is beginning to grow aware of the fact that people around you are changing inside. And the reason it's able to detect this is because it's beginning to become aware of changes that is happening on your part. This is good news. It really is. Because most people simply complain about what happened to them. Have you done this? Something dramatic happened, you say to yourself, what happened to me? What's going on? How can this be? In reality, you know that things are going to happen, but you just ignored the signs. The handwriting, so to speak, is in the wall, but you chose to ignore it. Maybe you've got other things to do. Maybe you're just simply too busy. Whatever the case may be, you've been picking it up, but you didn't focus on them. And that's why you get caught by surprise. And for a lot of people, this happens all the time. Things happen to them. When you have this dream where you see a loved one dying and the focus is on the process of dying, your subconscious is telling you that you are beginning to become aware of what's going on around you and the changes that you're going through that's projected into the changes that are going on in other people. And this enables you to make better choices. This enables you to understand that how you make sense of the universe is actually tied to the quality of your life. Your life didn't come out of nowhere. Your existence doesn't just happen to you, it didn't fall into your lap. Instead, it came from a decision, or to be more clear, a series of decisions. You made those choices, and those choices have consequences. And now that you are aware of this, the next step is to take ownership of this process so you can direct it. Is it going to be easy? Of course not. In many cases, it can be painful because nobody likes to be wrong. A lot of us like the luxury of having other people to blame. But at the end of the day, if you want to live a fully effective life, you have to take ownership over your life. And this means take ownership over your mindset, what you choose to be true, what you choose to believe in, and take ownership over the decisions that you make based on your beliefs. This is how you steer the ship that is your life towards what you think is the right direction. It's all about self-ownership. And the first step to this is to be aware of the process of dying and changing. It's perfectly okay to change directions. It's perfectly fine to turn your back on old directions that you were so invested in. Because maybe you found a better way. Maybe you found a path that makes more sense to you, and you have to find the courage to make that change. So focus on the process. What does it mean to be visited by dead loved ones in your dreams? Visitation dreams have an almost religious aspect to them. That's our subconscious normally constructs visitation scenery. Maybe there's some sort of weird light or a glow or whatnot. And at the end of the process, the issue behind visitation dreams is a growing consciousness of the fact that you control what is important in your life. You know those strange lights and eerie sounds that surround the image of your dead relative visiting you in your dreams? You made those. They don't have to be in your dream. But you think subconsciously that this is these details are are going to give an added level of immediacy or even a sense of urgency to your nighttime vision. That's why they exist. If you come from a religious or traditional background, it's very easy for you to conclude some sort of supernatural dimension because of those signals. And if you come from a more philosophical and secular background, there's a different explanation. But the explanation that doesn't go away, though, is that those come from you. You give them meaning. And this ultimately is the lesson or the moral behind visitation dreams. Your subconscious is trying to communicate to you that you have the power to give meaning to the things that you see, hear, taste, and touch every single day. That this meaning, that set of meanings that you are working with on a day to day basis, are not set in stone. You can change them. It takes courage and mental focus to actively work to change how you give meaning to your world. Otherwise, you're going to be left in a position of basically complaining. You live in a world you didn't create. You live in a world full of people that may be toxic. And if you're not careful, it's too easy to imagine yourself as some sort of victim. Or you. You live in a hostile world. It's so unfair. Unfortunately, thinking that way grinds down your spirit. It also reduces you to begging from the good graces of people who are more powerful than you, or at least people who you imagine yourself depending on. Are you tired of that mindset? Are you tired of feeling weak? Well, your visitation dream has just given you the answer. It is you giving meaning, solemnity, and a sense of urgency to those extra effects, the weird lights, the haunting sounds. All of those come from you. They're meanings you have chosen, and just as you have chosen them, you can choose a different meaning. Grab hold of that power, and you will start living the life that you feel you deserve. It takes courage to do this because a lot of the times we take this bundle of meaning from our parents. They didn't know any better. So they just blindly passed on this set of meaning from their grandparents on to you. And then if you're not careful, you'll pass this on to your children. Pass on something that makes sense to you. Pass on something that you feel enables you or empowers you to live your best life. Or, at the very least, enables you to craft the best version of you. What does it mean when you are visited by a friend who is still alive? If you dream that of a visitation from somebody you know is fully alive, your subconscious is trying to let you know that you have a tough time dealing with people as they are. There's a part of you that thinks you can change your friends. There's a part of you that thinks that you can remold your relationships to better fit whatever image you have in your mind. This is dangerous. I'm not going to candy coat my words here, but there's a part of you that thinks that other people are simply extensions of your ego. I know that sounds all intellectual and not, but let me just phrase it in terms that most people can understand. You want to use them. You want to redo them because you value people based on what they can do for you. You don't value people with the assumption that they already have value in of themselves, regardless of whether they can help you out or not. So you hang on to certain people in your life because of what you think they can bring to the table. Your subconscious is letting you know, using live friend visitation imagery, that you're on the wrong track. And when you think like a user, it's eventually going to burn you because your relationships are transactional in nature. Do you think the people that have you in their lives want you to be around because of just who you are? Think again. Like begets like. Birds of a feather flock together. If you are a user, chances are you're going to attract other users. The good news is there's a different path. Become friends with people that you genuinely like. They don't have to make you better. They don't have to bring something to the table. They don't have to reciprocate whatever you spend on them. You just appreciate them for who they are. And pretty soon you will attract people who will appreciate you because of who you are, not because of what you can do for them, not because of what doors you can open. Again, like attracts like. But what makes this difficult is you have to make the first move. As Mahatma Gandhi said, famously, be the change you want to see in this world. So if you don't want to be a user and you want to create beauty in your life, be a beautiful person. I'm not talking about cosmetics here. I'm not talking about external appearance. I'm talking about internal values. See people based on who they are. Don't put dollar signs on them. You'll be surprised as to how much value you can bring to your life and how much peace and beauty can blossom because you've changed your perspective regarding people. They're not extensions of your ego. They are not tools to be used for your own purposes. They have a right to exist on their own. What does it mean when you dream about someone who recently passed away? Dreams about the recently deceased are fairly easy to figure out at a fairly superficial level. When you dream of somebody who have recently passed away, your subconscious is letting you know that it is concerned about your mortality. This is especially true for people who are in their late 30s or early 40s. That's the point in your life where you start noticing that a lot of your friends that you grew up with are beginning to die. Now, of course, a lot of this is emotional. You care about those people. And it is a tragedy to see them die because they leave a lot of people in their wake. Our people love them. But on a different level, their passing reminds you of your mortality. Your subconscious is trying to slap you awake and tell you, listen, pretty soon your time will be up. What have you done with your life? What impact have you had? Are you leaving something behind that lets you know in no uncertain terms that you have made the world better? A lot of us live in what a famous author said, desperate anonymity. We're just another face in the crowd in the long progression of humanity on this planet. And let's face it, despite, with the exception of our children, we don't really leave much of a legacy. When you look at the pyramids of Egypt, who do you think of? You think about the pharaoh and nobody else. Maybe you think about the priesthood that supported the pharaoh and the high officials and whatnot. But you don't think about the small shop owner down the street. You don't think about the farmer that raised the crops that fed the people whose names are recorded for posterity. Who do you think you are in this big scheme of things? Well, here's a hint. Chances are it's not the Pharaoh, nor even a high official. Now, do you see where the desperate anonymity comes from? It doesn't have to be this way. You can leave a legacy. Now, it's not guaranteed, but you can write your own memoir. You can start entertaining your creative side. You can tell your story through your blog. Whatever the case may be, your subconscious is telling you there must be something more to your life than working, eating, going home, going to sleep, and repeating the process again and again. One day blurs into another, and before you know it, 30 years have passed, and your subconscious then tells you it's almost time to check out. What have you achieved? What are you leaving behind? If you think writing a memoir is a hassle or requires a tremendous amount of writing talent, think again. There are services like writeyourownbook.com, which give you a form. You just dictate the answers to the questions in the form, and they will take care of everything else. They will edit, transcribe, and send you a book that tells your life story. Pretty cool, right? Either you outsource it or you do it yourself, but leave a record. Because I know that this might come as a shock, but there's only one of you, and you are special. You get to see the world from your own distinctive and unique pair of eyes. Don't let it go to waste. Just because you're other face in the crowd doesn't mean that the world does not need to hear from you. Share your story in this great tapestry of humanity through history. What does it mean when you dream about a friend you were once enemies with? When you notice that your dead friend in your dream was somebody you had a run-in with, your subconscious is trying to communicate to you a very powerful message about forgiveness. It's very common for a lot of people to think that forgiveness involves them as the center. They're the ones that need to be apologized to. They're the ones who suffered. They are the center of the moral action, if you will. But in reality, when you have dreams of you seeing a dead friend that you had a serious disagreement with in the past or once even considered your enemy, your subconscious is telling you that you need to forgive yourself because you're just using this imagery as a projection of issues you've had with yourself. Maybe the reason why you're struggling in different areas of your life or why you're having a tough time adapting or changing with the times is because there are certain things that you can't forgive about yourself. A lot of this is due to the fact that we tend to write our own story that, for whatever reason, we feel we cannot deviate from. We can't walk away from this script. We think that it's set in stone. The script sets who we can and cannot be, where we can and cannot go, what we can and cannot do. But here's the problem. That script is written by you. And once you change and once life has taught you a lesson or two, you are more than free to change that script. But what happens in real life? That's right. People don't bother. Maybe they got married. Maybe they are caught up in a job they hate. Whatever the case may be, they feel that they simply do not have the time. So the script continues and they blindly live their lives according to the script. And throughout this time, they're miserable. What your subconscious is telling you is you need to forgive yourself by first understanding that you wrote the script. Take ownership. Then realize that you screwed yourself up because of the script. Once you realize it and you understand the bitter consequences of that, forgive yourself. The forgiveness is the key that turns the lock to you rewriting the script. Without the forgiveness, without seeing in symbolic terms, the dead friend that used to be enemies with, but it's not, but are now, but we're now, what we're later friends with, you have to make that change. You have to go through that changed mindset with your relationship, with your decisions. That's how you achieve victory. Because everything else will just be intellectual. Seriously. You in your head you're thinking, okay, yeah, it all makes sense. I take ownership over my past mistakes. I am in full control of the ship of my life. Great. But what separates this from all the inspirational quotes that you see on Facebook or Twitter is faith and trust and action. And there's no better way to put all those three together than the act of forgiving yourself. It has to be clear, it has to be intentional, and it has to be done with the mind towards taking ownership. It must be an outflowing of the fact that you have taken responsibility over your emotional life. This scares a lot of people because, as miserable as some people may be, and believe me, there's a lot of miserable people out there, they don't want to turn back because they feel they've spent so much emotional energy going in this direction. They're already so invested in this direction. They cannot possibly turn back afterwards. Some even bring age into it. Maybe they're in their 50s or in their 60s or 70s. Those are excuses. Seriously. Think about it this way. If you know that you got scammed, like say you invested in a Ponzi scheme, does it make sense to keep throwing good money at that project when you know that it's another crypto scam? Of course not. The same applies to your bad self definition and self image decisions. There's a better script out there for your life. You have to cut ties, take ownership, and move on. And the key part of this process is to forgive yourself. What does it mean to dream of a dead friend pulling you? One of the most disconcerting dream images that you could ever experience involves a dead friend pulling you. There are variations of this. Sometimes they're decomposing, they look like zombies. Some even morph into demons. But the main focus of the dream is not so much the face of the friend, the bond, but it's the pulling action. Your subconscious is trying to let you know, in symbolic terms, that you are beginning to become aware of the influence of other people on you and how this leads to you making, let's just say, less than satisfactory decisions. Did you know that there was a scientific study done several years back regarding the quality of people's decisions? The researchers found out that most people make their decisions based on impulse. They let their feelings get the better of them and they make their choice. That's how impulsive decisions are made. Pretty clear. The interesting thing is, once they were asked to explain those decisions, these same individuals who basically acted impulsively would come up with all sorts of seemingly rational and even logical explanation. This led the researchers to conclude that even though we let our impulses guide us or even trigger us into making choices, we try to explain these decisions to ourselves and other people in logical terms. My own conclusion to this is that we have this propensity to lie to ourselves. We know the real reason, we are familiar with the real process, but we feel that we have to give others an explanation that we think they want to hear. At the very least, we try to live up to what we think their expectations are. And this brings me back to the pulling action, because you're aware of the influence of other people. You are aware of of what you feel is the need to explain things or view things in a way that lines up with what is expected of you. But a part of you is beginning to wake up. Part of you is saying, I don't have to do this anymore. I can stand on my personal truth. I can stand on my own personal authenticity. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be a rude person. This doesn't mean that you have to be this obvious rebel. But all it means is that you just need to be clear as to what makes sense to you, what is real to you, and then proceed from there. That is your secret weapon. Because otherwise, you have this hold on you that is based on conformity that you cannot break free from. Before you know it, you think that's always been there. You think that it's part of your identity. It's not. It's something that you have chosen. It's a temporary arrangement, and you are well within your rights to break those ties, to break that influence and come up with something that makes more sense to you. What does it mean to dream of a dead friend smiling at you? ExploreYourDreamLife.com is a collection of dream interpretations of common dream motifs in different settings involving different sub themes. We've covered images of a dead friend, dead relative smiling at you. You might want to consider using the search function of this YouTube channel or going to exploreyourdreamlife.com and using the search box there to find in-depth analysis with different examples involving this very deep dream symbol. I'm not going to go through those different meanings in this analysis because it is its own video. It's so deep, so nuanced that we've written a very long blog post on it with a matching video. I invite you to check those resources at exploreyourdreamlife.com's blog, as well as this YouTube channel. What does it mean to dream of a dead friend not talking to you? There's many reasons why people wouldn't talk to you. Just because you see in a dream that you have a dead friend and you're trying to talk to them and they refuse to reciprocate, that this is somehow bad. I'm going to focus on one particular meaning of this dream symbolism. I'm talking about your need for reciprocity. It seems that right out of the womb, we are hardwired to expect reciprocity. That if somebody's good to you, subconsciously you are demanding that they be good to you as well. The question is this realistic? Is this how the world works? While we all can understand the concept of you get what you put in, you get out what you put in, or you reap what you sow, that is not always the case. And your subconscious is showing you through this interesting dream imagery of a dead friend refusing to talk to you. Important lessons regarding your own conception of reciprocity. Don't get me wrong, I get where it comes from. Because if you think about it, if our caveman ancestors did not have this natural tendency to reciprocate, we wouldn't be here. Because it leads to mutual self-preservation. It leads to healthy, reinforcing communal behaviors. I get all of that. There is a survival factor to it. But we're not cavemen anymore. A tiny fraction of the world's population is able to produce so much food. In fact, we produce more food now than ever. So reciprocity in that context is going away. But the need for reciprocity still remains. So here's the question that your subconscious is basically trying to dance around. How do you expect reciprocity when when bad things happen to good people? When the world seems so unfair? There are many answers to this, of course, almost as many as the number of people who try to tackle this question. But for our present purposes, the answer that you might want to consider is your right and your power to come up with a definition of reciprocity or a protocol to address it that comes strictly from you, not from your parents, not from the need for any kind of self-preservation, not even issues of survival. It must come from you. It is your personal truth. This takes courage because it's easy to be, according to the Christian Bible, to love those who are lovable. It is easy to be generous to people who smile and say thank you. It's really hard to be generous to people who turn around, grab your cash, and spit at. I wish I could tell you that those people don't exist, but they do. What do you do in that situation? And this is where your definition of reciprocity must be centered in the fact that you willed it. In other words, I am kind because I want to be kind. I am giving because I want to be giving. I'm not asking for anything in return. I am just expressing my own authentic generosity. You know you're being generous when you give with no expectation of return. You know you're operating from a real, genuine place when you don't even expect a thank you in return. You're just giving because you have cultivated that outward flow, that sense of selflessness within you. And maybe this is the answer because the ability to do that is rooted in self-ownership. You're basically saying to the universe, I'm loving you. Not because you loved me first, not because I can expect something from you, not because there's some sort of return. I'm loving you because I choose to. Powerful stuff. Because if you're able to muster that kind of power, can you imagine what kind of defining power you can impose on other areas of your existence? What does it mean to dream of a dead friend coming back to life? If the main focus of your dream is the resurrection process, please understand that your subconscious is telling you a very important lesson. It is a lesson that involves subtopics and sub-themes of forgiveness, redemption, self-reinvention, and second chances. At its core, all these sub-themes have something in common for them to make sense. This is the common idea of grace. Usually, when Christians think of grace, they think it in theological terms. Because if you read the Christian Bible, you would realize that this religion is very different from other religions. Other religions are really just a reflection of the human mind and its need for reciprocity. It's transactional in nature. Basically, you do something for God, maybe light candles, attend church, or do this, do that, be kind to others, say the right words. In other words, fulfill obligations. And then God, because he saw all those things, owes you blessings. He owes you miracles. The sad reality is that if that transaction is real, then there is no need for God. Think about it. Why would you need a savior when you can actually be a good person, when you can actually affect all these good changes in the world? What is their need for a God for? Christianity takes a different tack. It starts with the presumption, with the premise that people are evil. That's a pungent way of saying it, but it's true. We are born sinful. If you don't believe me, just look at Psalms. King David said, I was knit in iniquity in my mother's womb. Or Prophet Jeremiah, when he said, the human heart is treacherous, meaning you can't trust it. You can't even trust yourself. And the Bible goes on and on about the depravity of human beings. There's nothing holy about us. So in this context, salvation or God saving you or the Holy Spirit enabling you to be born again can only happen because of God's mercy. It's not something you work for. It's not something you qualify for. It's not something you have to do something to avail of. So in that context, real Christianity, I'm talking about Bible-based Christianity, not Catholicism or Orthodoxy or any other, like, shall we say, transactional variations of Christianity, is revolutionary because it's almost it's out of this world, literally, because that's not how the human mind works. And if you want a good example of this, look at the parable of the vineyard workers, where Jesus said that a vineyard owner went to the market to look for workers to help with his business. So he went in the morning and told them, I'm going to pay you this amount of money. And then he kept going back at different times of the day. And when it comes time to pay the workers, the people who were hired first, they were thinking, since he is paying those who he just hired the same amount of money as what he promised us, he's going to have to pay us more. And if you think about it, that makes all the sense in the world. Logically speaking, that makes sense because if you work longer, you deserve more. If you kept God's word and you were a good person and you treated other people decently and you helped others, you deserve more. But at the end, Jesus said that the vineyard owner paid everybody the same wage. And here's where it gets interesting. The first worker said, that's not fair. I mean, that's basically what they're trying to get across. And the master said, don't I have a right to spend my money as I wish? That is grace. So if you're a Christian, you are relying on God's grace, that regardless of what you did, regardless of what kind of person you are, God will still be merciful to you because he is love. He is gracious. And if you are saved, his grace is so powerful, and assuming that your acceptance of it is sincere, and you have an open heart that has been humbled by guilt, regret, and all that, and we're talking about real repentance here, you allow his grace to change you. And that's why in this context, the letter of St. James makes a lot of sense, where he said, faith without works is dead. In other words, a person who truly accesses God's faith through God's grace through faith alone can't help but produce good works because he has been saved. And I bring this back in the context of seeing your dead friend come back to life in your life, because it is the theme of resurrection, of a new life, of being reborn. We go through this on a daily basis because when we let go of our past, we let go of our guilt, we let go of lying to ourselves and lying to other people, we claim this power to be reborn based on our on values we have freely chosen. But this requires intentionality. Please understand that the process that I just described is not religious in nature. I'm just talking about how this plays out in day-to-day life. And unfortunately, so many people ignore this because either they're clueless or they're afraid. They ignore this, and it's really bad. It's really sad because life, whether you like it or not, is full of first, second, third, fourth, fifth chances. As long as you're not dead, you still have a chance to live your best life. You still have a chance to be the best person you could be. You still have a chance to experience all the love, happiness, and contentment that life has to offer. But for that to happen, you have to play an active role in your own personal rebirth. Allow yourself to change your mind. Allow yourself to be more forgiving. Allow yourself to be an instrument of grace in this world. That's what it means to see your dead friend coming back to life. And if you're spiritual at all, please understand that the best dead friend that you can see in that scenario is no other than Jesus Christ. Because the Bible says, how do we define a good friend? A good friend lays down his life for his friends. The Bible is clear. Jesus died the death we deserve because the wages of sin is death, and all have fallen short of the glory of God. Still, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, so that if we believe in him, we will not perish, but have eternal life.